Hello, everyone. Welcome to another question and answer time astrology version. As usual, welcome to my channel. If you're new here, welcome. We have a chat on the right-hand side of your screen. If there's other people here live, that's where they'll be. And if you have any questions for me, that's why I'm here live, so that people can ask me in real time. So if you have any questions, you can put them in the chat. And if you're finding this later, apologies, but for next time, I do this once a month on the second Thursday at 7 p.m. Central, 8 p.m. Eastern time. I usually do a call for questions a few days before on Instagram, so it's over there. But you can also email me at aligninglight@gmail.com. You can ask me questions there and I can answer them here. Or put a comment below and I'll catch it for next month. You do not need to be present live for me to answer it. You can just catch my response later, on the recording. Um, I think that's my usual spiel. A couple new things. So this is more of my side thing. Usually, what I'm spending most of my time doing is one-on-one consults with people. I read astrology with folks. That's my main practice. And so you can check all of that out at aligninglightastrology.com. And I actually just put up a new service that was kind of wrought out of a challenge that I've had in forecasting for people. So, one of my favorite things to do with folks is to forecast their 6 months to a year ahead or longer. We can get very wide and look at the whole lifetime. However, uh, what I've been noticing is I do a lot of preparation that I don't get to because I only have 75 minutes with people, and I find that 90 is just with the amount of stuff that I say, it's just 75 is enough. Trust me. People are tired at 75. But I can get down to like a month by month level, like with continuous perfections and monthly, annual perfections with the monthly version and other things, other transits, just looking at things month by month, lunar revolutions. And there's just like time and time again, I'll do the prep and I just can't get to it in the time allotted. So I've made a whole other reading for people who want the month by month, like play by play, where I can say, and I don't get like super specific in terms of like, oh, you'll find the love of your life in October. Like I'm not that powerful enough of a wizard. I can be like, hey, the weather is good for that. It's a good time to go out and date or not. But what I can do month by month is let people know what life focuses, what areas of life are probably going to be louder, what themes might be louder during that month. What's the general quality? Is it looking more favorable or easeful or more difficult? And with those two kinds of things, like what are the themes? What is the quality of this period of time? We can start to map out a year and we can start to like strategize. And this is the stuff that I'm looking at for myself from time to time to try to strategize. And so here we are. So it's called the Deep Forecast, month by month deep forecast, and it's on my website. So check it out. Um, I think that's it. Oh, and I did lower a price, oddly. I felt like my prices for tutoring and mentoring were just, it was to the point where like I felt like it's really getting into a problem with accessibility. And so I lowered the price from $75 an hour to $60 an hour. And notice that also I have a sliding scale. And the sliding scale, a lot of people qualify for it. And um, it's relevant for tutoring. You can use the sliding scale for tutoring stuff as well. So just let me know. Send me an email if you want a sliding scale tutoring, mentoring thing. I know that like students invest so much when they're learning astrology, like when you are getting serious into it. A good book is 40, $50. There's more than one book. Courses are $300 to $500. So meeting with me for 1 hour, yeah, it's a big investment for people to. So I lowered my price. That's why I did it. It's kind of weird because usually people are only increasing, and I generally am the same. But it felt like the right thing to do. So that's news. I think that's it. And hopefully that talking that I just did gave people time to get here. Hello, Clark Wade. Hello. So I think I'm going to get going. I think I'm going to start with my first topic, which is going to be looking at Uranus moving over. I'm going to use the examples of the sun and the midheaven because that's what someone asked me. But I also want to make it a little bit more generalized and make it so that, just showing you my process so you could do this for any planet or point in the birth chart that you transiting Uranus is going to be moving over. So let me see. Uh, Maybe I'll use this chart. So I'm guessing this person who asked me, thank you for the question. It's a great prompt because Uranus is currently in Taurus, and in April of 2026, Uranus is going to be going into Gemini. So I'm making an assumption here, but I'm going to pretend like this person has a sun in Gemini. And then I'm also going to pretend like their midheaven is in Gemini. And like maybe they're a Virgo rising, Maybe this theoretical person and what they're going to be having pretty soon, let's pretend like they have sun in midheaven here natally. And then let's save this as a person. And then we can see, whoops, what did I do? Well, there's that. Let me actually do a thing. Example. I should have had this cast up before. Apologies. Now will it let me? Yeah, now it will. Okay, so what happens next April to this theoretical made-up person who is having Uranus move over their midheaven and then their sun? What would that do? So here are my little rules and procedures. So the first thing we're going to do is look at the symbolism of the planet or point that is in the birth chart. So first things first, the midheaven for this person. This is about career and public life and life path. And the sun is often about the self, the identities, the soul or spirit of the person, a lot of their self-expression, excuse me. And the second thing we want to consider, besides just the raw symbolism of that point or planet, the second thing we want to think about is, in the case of a planet, an invisible traditional planet, if you're me and you've got your Hellenistic astrology lens on, what does the sun rule over? So in this chart is the 12th house. So then whatever Uranus is influencing, that influence is not only going to be in the 10th house, on the midheaven, on the sun, affecting those symbolisms of career and identity, but they're also, those Uranian things are going to be affecting the 12th house, which is a place about spirituality, your internal world, mental health, emotional health, chronic health issues, usually. Any long-standing challenge is a 12th house thing. Suffering and its management is a 12th house thing. And so if we go back to the transits moving over these points, so then what does Uranus do? So now our third thing is to think, well, what is this transiting planet bringing to the environment? And what are they bringing to these points and to this planet? And so what is Uranus? Uranus is interruption, disruption, change. So disruption, interruption, or change. Maybe it's intentional. Maybe it's on behalf of that person's wishes that there is a change. Maybe not. Probably both. There's probably going to be things that are interruptive that you didn't choose, and probably interruptions and disruptions that hopefully you did. But change, interruptions, disruptions to the career. Uranus over the sun. Changes, interruptions, disruptions to the self, to the identities. So let's look at novelty. Uranus is also novelty. And let's get rid of all of these other Let me get rid of all this stuff for a second. Because it's distracting. So novelty. Uranus bringing new things, breakthroughs, sudden insights. So novelty, breakthroughs, sudden insights with the career, breakthroughs, novelty, sudden insights about the self, new things about the self, experiencing new things about yourself, maybe in public, maybe in your career. The sun is leadership. So maybe a new leadership role or interruption in a leadership role, changing your approach to leadership in a career. So all sorts of ways we could bring change into some of these symbolisms. So hopefully that's giving you a bit of an idea. And let me see if I missed anything. Yeah, I mean, authenticity, that's kind of goes along with Uranus. It's not concern, especially with the sun. That's such an especially interesting transit, is thinking about what happens when Uranus moves over someone's sun. Because, if I pretend like I'm a modern astrologer, which is kind of funny because I never do that. And I'm not even going to call it a co-ruler, but let's pretend like I believe for some reason that Uranus is the ruler of Aquarius. And I do think it's a nice Venn diagram. Aquarius has some traits because of air, because of its fixity, and because of Saturn that really do mimic some things that Uranus does. And it makes sense to me why people have made Uranus into a ruler of Aquarius. Anyway, I digress. But one of the things that I think really does fit is this duality pair of Leo and the sun, and kind of being the paragon or the best version of something, the shining example of something, the kind of even maybe conforming to a certain standard of something. And that can be all fine and well. Uranus isn't really interested in any of that. Uranus is non-conformity. I think both do authenticity. I think both the sun and Uranus have something to say about authenticity in different ways. Um, yeah, I could have a whole conversation about the sun and authenticity and Uranus and Aquarius and authenticity. They both kind of have a hand in that. But all to say, when Uranus moves over the sun, there's maybe going to be these budding of forces of, you know, being the self, being a shining example of something, being seen potentially, and then also having this non-conformity or authenticity or weirdness, around those themes of self and identities and self-expression. So it could be a lot of annoying stuff and also a lot of constructive stuff. So I hope that gives people an idea. So continue to first identify in the birth chart. So for this example, if I want to do the same thing with Uranus over this Venus, what is Venus about? What is Uranus going to bring to Venus in terms of those topics? And what does Venus rule over? And what is Uranus going to bring to those house topics? So those are the steps that I like to think about. So best of luck with whatever that is. And let me see if there are any questions before I move on to my next topic. Hello, Yas. I'm not sure if that's a question or a comment. Uh, 12th house ruler in the first house. Sure. Yeah, any particular questions about that or just telling me about yourself? Because it sounds like you're also a 12th housey person. I'm also a 12th housey person. It's a lifestyle. Alrighty. Welcome, peace. Thanks for coming, everybody. It's good to see you. It's always fun when there's people here. And let's move on. Thank you, Danielle, for the Uranus question. Um, I guess while we're talking about Uranus, let's talk a little bit about this outer planet configuration that's been going on. And let me get my dials back set to the right place because I've seen a few examples that I wanted to share that I'm noticing in terms of the Uranus, Neptune, Pluto configuration that's been working on locking into place. So more in 2026, the Pluto, Neptune, Uranus stuff is going to be locking into place in our very externalizing air and fire signs that are very expressive outwardly. And the air and the fire, it very much kind of acts upon the elements around it. It acts upon the earth and the water around it. So we get a faster pace with air and fire versus water and earth. We get a bit more outward activity that's obvious with air and fire versus water and earth. So all to say this outer planet stuff, it's going to be, especially in 2026, pretty alive, awake, alert, enthusiastic. And one example I've been noticing, and this really ties into the 7-year Uranus transit across the sign, but in my state of Wisconsin, we are getting, finally, they're starting to talk about getting a light rail train system that will connect Madison, Wisconsin with Milwaukee, Wisconsin, and Chicago, Illinois, which would be huge for us. And we had the opportunity to have this train come in here and be built back in like 2008, 2009, or no, it was 2010. And our silly Star Spangled Ding Dong of a governor back then, Scott Walker, he turned down the federal money because he's stupid. And he's even to this day digging in his heels that that was the right decision. Um, I don't see what could be bad about having more connection and like a whole open corridor between Milwaukee, Madison, and Chicago. Um, I digress. I get on a rant about public transport, but this is such a great thing. And what happens with this outer planet configuration, this is great, like very fast shifts or changes in societies, in economies, in spiritual, like socio-spiritual or like political type spheres of culture. Like it's wide sweeping changes to society, basically. And it can go in all directions, for better, for worse. In America, we're seeing a lot of ways for worse right now. But in Madison, Wisconsin, at least, I think we're seeing a positive example of what is going to be a game changer. So this is one of the phrases that I've been thinking about a lot when I notice this outer planet configuration reflected in life. It seems like stuff that's a game changer. And so another example that well, before I get to my other example, the timeline is really funny for the train in Madison. They're starting to talk about where to put it, and they're figuring that they could break ground around 2029 and that the train could be done by 2032 or 2033. And that just happens to be the 7 years that Uranus is going to be in Gemini. And then by the time they get out of there in 2032, Madison will have a whole new train and it'll be a leap forward for us in so many ways. So, all to say, that was one really obvious example to me as kind of a leap forward when we see outer planets that are in like sextiles and trines, and the energy is just flowing very freely and unobstructedly between all of these agents of change. The other example that I have, and this one, I actually have a link. There's this person who kind of figured out like with rare plants, like plant people, the people that are getting the cool plants. Um, and yeah, those cool people. And some of these plants are rare and hard to find, I guess. And this person she figured out a way to like basically well, I don't know if she figured it out, but she explained it to other people en masse how to do like this weird cell culture thing where you take a little bit of the plant cells and then you turn it into a whole new plant, basically. It's like a more, it sounds like a more sciencey version of like taking a clipping of a plant and transplanting it, but she's accidentally disrupted the entire rare plant industry or something. I'm probably explaining it very poorly, but this also felt like a kind of disruptor, game changer type of outer planet configuration thing. And it's interesting that the story is coming out as Uranus is in Taurus, and Taurus is an earth sign that has to do more with plants in this regard, which I thought was right and fitting. Those are a couple examples. There's many more. There's actually I've been kind of looking at F1, not because I'm kind of interested in it. I've been learning a lot about it because my partner watches F1 sometimes. And they're going to have a lot of technological changes next year. Although they're always having changes with their engines and like fiddling with all that stuff. If you're like a mechanic person, it's like a whole language. I was actually trying to read about it today. I was like, I don't know what any of this means. But I'm going to be watching them to see, because it's a very technological thing. So I'm going to be watching that as another indicator for really big leaps in progress or advancement of a thing. So have fun out there. Wow, outer planets, cool. Hello, Kyle. Hello, David. Nice to see y'all. Let's I think get into social media unless anyone has any questions or wants me to talk about anything. Oh, okay. We got someone who, oh yeah, the 12th house thing, and you have a 12th house job. Yeah, that sounds fitting. Let's see. I want to make sure I have my notes up correctly here. And we've got the chart. So, okay, social media. Wow, it is so confusing. Um, okay, so for context, I'm an elder millennial. I am 37. I'm almost 38. I think. Yes, I'm pretty sure. And so I grew up without computers, really. I didn't have, and they were starting to come into being a regular thing, like most homes of people who were well off when I was in like middle school and high school had computers. Um, I didn't get the internet until I was a junior in high school. I think I was a junior or a senior in high school. But when I was at my friends' houses who had more money than me, they had, and more technology, they had dial-up internet and they had IM Messenger. And I remember, that being my introduction to the social landscape on the internet. And since then, we've come a long way. And now we have AI slop. So we've gone from really chat rooms as like, and then like these, message board systems to AI slop. And this has been since the early 80s, late 70s. And this seems to, the whole cycle of this thing, this internet that has grown and the social media that's grown upon it really seems to fit the 36-year Saturn-Neptune cycle. I was kind of reverse engineering, and part of the thing that inspired me to go on this very casual journey, which is 100% fueled by Wikipedia. And I'm giving zero citations today because I'm tired of giving citations right now in my life. And you can look all of this up on Wikipedia. Just look up social media on Wikipedia, look up like message boards or something, or the history of the internet. This is where all this is coming from, just to give where my timeline is going to come from. But also part of what inspired this was just, constantly watching the whole AI confusion and lack of clarity, lack of certainty that has really increased dramatically in 2024 and 2025. And that's been very reflective of this Saturn-Neptune. What is real? What is illusion? This convergence of these two very different energies in some ways. And I was hearing Chris Brennan and Austin Coppock talk about it on their last forecast again. They had spent a really good chunk of time talking about Saturn, Neptune, and really reflecting on, yeah, this confusion and uncertainty. And it's like, I can't trust what I'm seeing. And how much longer is it going to be like this? And it got me to thinking that this is not the first time that as a group we have faced a new, for us at that time, level of dealing with lack of clarity on the internet, having to do with social media. And so I was thinking back, and this is probably like the fuzziest, not real date that I have, but I also have something to back it up. So remember, like, and this is anyone, please chime in if you have any recollection of this and like as like a collective memory. Like we all were getting Instagram. Instagram started in about 2011. Uh, yeah, 2010, 2011. That's when Instagram started. And Facebook had already been a thing, MySpace had already been a thing, but there was a certain level after a while of like this realization that the image that people were putting on social media was super fake, like extra fake, like to the point where there was then it gets to about 2014 and I noticed it around 2015 and maybe I'm late to the game. I'm sure some people are like, I noticed people being fake back on MySpace. But it seemed like it was getting to a different level because then by like 2010, 2011, we started getting filters on Instagram. So that was a big thing, the filters. And it's like, what am I even seeing? What is even real? What do people's real faces look like anymore? And the filters came, and that was 2011. So let's look at, and really what I'm doing is I'm following the Neptune-Saturn relationship. So let me see. And I really want to focus in on the hard aspects between them. So by 2010, 2011, we are in a Saturn-Neptune trine. And this is when Instagram was made. This is when uh, filters became a thing. And it was this free-flowing energy between very aesthetically pleasing Libra, very glamorous Neptune, Saturn being this structure, reality, all of that, very free-flowing in between them. And then by the time we get to 2015, 2016, and this is where we're starting to get into the Saturn-Neptune square. And now Instagram's been around for a while. This is where we start seeing academic papers and studies come out about the damaging effects of social media for the first time. So I actually went on PubMed and did a search just looking for studies about social media and not even necessarily did I look at any of them. I just wanted to do like a search for like what was being studied and when did this start being studied. And I started seeing publications around, what was it? Yeah, 2014 and 2015. So you can do that as well. You can go on PubMed and search for studies about the health effects or the societal or mental health effects of social media, especially on the youth, the children. And that does start to show up on PubMed around 2014, 2015, around this square. So these kind of difficulties of energies coming together of what is real and what is illusion. And so then I just keep going backwards. I'm like, well, what was during the opposition? So that would have been the Uranus-Neptune opposition. This was around 2005, 2004, 05. And this was when Facebook was getting popular. MySpace was made in 2003. So as we were coming into this period, this Saturn-Neptune opposition, this kind of, again, just how it is unreconcilability of what is fake and what is real. Yeah, 2003, 2004, 2005, we're coming into that opposition and we get MySpace and Facebook. So that's fun. And then even going back further, uh, the square before that. So that's, I'm looking at these squares, oppositions. Uh, that would have been about 1998, 1999. That's when we were really having a pretty strong Neptune Saturn square, but the waxing opening one. So it goes around like this. I've been going backwards chronologically here. Um, so going back even further, this is the couple years after AOL Instant Messenger was created. And we can go back then and remember, I mean, gal, there was no guardrails on that thing. Parents had no idea we were on Instant Messenger talking to God knows who. And that was a first, I think, one of the bigger things where like this instant messenger is getting popular and there's this chance for deception, for shenanigans, for exploitation, for lies and deception, and things not being necessarily what they are presenting as under this kind of this veil of anonymity. And let's just keep rewinding. So 1997 is when AOL Instant Messenger was made or released. But even before that, our first public dial-up bulletin board system, the first chat rooms are born in 1978 and 1980, around there. And that was when this cycle all began. Uh, we can see it's actually a little before it. So it's like 36 years plus some. As Saturn is closing out the last of one of these cycles and entering into a conjunction, the last conjunction we had, 36 some years ago. This is when like ARPANET and like the military government internet that is not unveiled, this is when that cycle is wrapping up. And then as we see Saturn heading into Neptune, this is when we start to see the basically the internet becoming a public thing that the public can use more and more and more. And then by the time we get to when is the last conjunction? It was like the late 80s, early 90s. I just keep thinking about like Reagan or something, but um, Saturn Neptune conjunction, late 80s. And not too much that I found on the timeline for this exactly, but I think this is still just this kind of birthing point where all of those like very foundational, again, government military applications were finding their way into more of a wider stream application, set of applications. And by the time we do get to the late 80s, now we're ready to start this whole cycle of the internet as we know it now, including chat rooms, including bulletin board systems. And then, okay, let's go back in the reverse order. Or I'll repeat myself like I'm a children's show. Um, and then we have AOL Instant Messenger at the next square. So Instant Messenger becoming popular. And then at the opposition, we have MySpace and Facebook being created. And then uh, by the time we get to the waxing square, or sorry, the waning square, when we get 75% of the way around, Saturn in a waning square with Neptune, that's when we see the first studies coming out that, hey, the internet might be a problem. The social media, I should say, social media might be a problem for the health of our population. And now here we are, and also just not knowing what's real or fake, which is part of why it's such a mental health mess. And now here we are again, and now we have AI. And it's just like the next level of this thing. And it's a whole new thing, too. So I think we should watch AI then, in these intervals of the next square, the next opposition in the next 36 years. So if I'm still at this in 36 years, maybe you'll hear me give a whole one of these about AI casually, sloppily on my own from Wikipedia. I love Wikipedia. I grew up with like high school teachers telling me that Wikipedia is like the devil, and it's like, no, it's great. Like for the most part, people aren't messing with the the factualness of a lot of the stuff I'm using. Um, the astrology pages I wouldn't trust, ironically, because people are trying to mess with those. But I digress. So that was fun. I thought that was kind of a fun little thing. So it's like these kind of intense points during the squares and the oppositions of just this machine of fantasy that that has arisen in terms of the internet being used for social media. Of course, social media is good for other things. I don't want to be, total whatever, but that's my story. Let's see if there's any questions or concerns. Yeah, I was in systems of schools too much. I will give citations. Like I'm writing a paper, it's turning into a lit review, and you bet there are citations. There's a time or a place, and this was not one I determined that I needed it. Ah, hello, Abby. Nice to see you. How to know if we have foreign settlement chances? Ooh, that is such a good question. That's actually, I'm gonna actually hold on to that one for next month, because I know that there are actual, there's instruction on this, and it's in Dorotheus, Carmen Astrologicum. And I know it's in there somewhere. They talk about the chances of if someone is, say, removed from their homeland, what are the chances that they're going to get back? And I was made aware of this by Amy Green, who is a different astrologer who is excellent. But give me a chance to look into this, and yeah, I'll cover that for next month. Let me think too. Because I'm immediately thinking about the moon and the moon's next application, but that's pretty specific if someone is like dealing with months and months at a time. Yeah, maybe there are some things I can say right now actually about it that are just more general. Um, so this is a topic. So the first thing I like to do when I'm looking at a chart and trying to answer a question or just explore the situation and see what's going on. I mean, first of all, I want to have your birth chart, which I don't, but that's okay because I'm going to just talk about maybe how to look at it. But let's say I didn't have a birth chart. Then I would want to look at the transits happening on top of that birth chart. And um, can you give me your rising sign? Do you know your rising sign? That would be helpful. Otherwise, I can just kind of go off the cuff, but you might have to work harder. Oh, the 1999 Grammys album was iconic. I'll have to Google it, but just anything about 1999 and any music going on at that time, there was some good stuff happening. I'm pretty much thinking about Prince. Um, but I believe that. So, okay, I'm just gonna pick one in terms of rising sign. So, what I really am looking for is I want to look at the fourth house. I want to look at the IC in terms of home or living situation. Although, if people are, say, immigrating, dealing with really long distance travel, unfamiliar, going to or from really unfamiliar places, that could also be a ninth house thing or a 12th house thing in terms of long distance travel or immigration experiences. So having luck with those, having better outcomes, better favorability, what I want to see is I want to see a planet like Jupiter connecting inside of or sending a ray to one of these places or all of them. So like right now for this Leo rising, Jupiter can see the fourth house by trine. That's really helpful. If, say, the IC was floated over into the third house for this person, then Jupiter can also see that. That's very helpful. So Jupiter is helping. in some way or another to stabilize these topics. Let's say though that like Jupiter by transit was like in the fourth or on the IC, that is going to be one piece of evidence that will help me to move toward more of a favorable outcome. To say, yeah, there's a better chance, the probability is higher that you'll have success with topics of home or living situation. Or additionally, let's say, okay, in this chart, Mars rules the fourth house of home and living situation. And let's say their natal Mars is over here. Well, then I want maybe Jupiter to be on top of them, or I want Jupiter to be in good condition like they are right now, or Jupiter in some position where they can see that Lord of the fourth or the Lord of the IC. So there are several things that can happen just in transit timing that will give you little pockets or windows of time where the probability of you having a more favorable or positive outcome is going to be higher. Like essentially one way I have of saying this is it's like running with the wind at your back, the wind pushing you along versus running but running into the wind. You know, I'm going to be looking for transits that help kind of push you along. So that's one thing in general that I'm going to look for. Uh, the other things I'm thinking about are more specific and come more down to like the day of the or like the time when that person left the last place. I think that's part of the story. So I'm going to try to see what I can find on this and see what and I'll let you know what I find next month. But in general, just having benefics like Jupiter or Venus blessing or sending their love beams, their little magical rays to your planets or places that have to do with your living situation, that's going to be really helpful. Best of luck. Um, yeah, because that stuff gets to be really serious. I know too. So sometimes there's questions that, like, I'm really good at finding almost like the meteorological weather, you know, when are conditions the best to get the best outcome? Like it's like planting a seed when it's sunny out versus trying to plant seeds in the rain. I can tell when it's a good time to plant seeds. Um, that's one skill in astrology. There's a whole separate other skill called horary astrology, which is a word that I have always struggled to say. I feel like I have marbles in my mouth. I'll write it in the chat. Horary astrology. And I really like horary because especially if you have specific questions of will it or won't it? Will I or won't I? Is this application going to be accepted or is this application going to be denied? I really love horary in asking those more binary yes or no type of questions. So, my some of my favorite astrologer, Cameron Cassidy. There's so many. Oh gosh, I'm trying to think of her. I can think of her website name. Hold on, let me find it. Andrea Althea. I can never say it. Astrology. Cameron Cassidy. Usually Rob Bailey, but I think Rob Bailey has been out on paternity leave. To All is also really great of Tiger Time. Um, there's so many people who do horary. Oh, oh, he's got Kazemi in his name. I'm always following him on threads. Anyway, maybe that's something. I need to get a better list on them. Hold on a second. Yeah, nah. I'm sorry. I love you people so much that have like really hard to spell website names. I mean, granted, I have a bunch of dumb English words that have a bunch of like IGH, which between you and me, I hate that. I'm like, those letters should not be silent. We should be pronouncing every single one of them. But yeah, if I can't, I can't find your stuff. But anyway, find a horary astrologer. They're really good for that stuff. Let's also look at, okay, next question. What was my next thing? I talked about the outer planets. I talked about social media. Uh-oh, am I going to get into a philosophical corner these last 15 minutes? If none of you have astrology questions, I'm going to go on some philosophical, like Andy Rooney, 1990s-esque type of rants potentially. I got to look at the weather. You remember remember when I used to do this game of should I say it or not? What does the sky look like? Am I going to get myself in trouble? Well, maybe. Chiron is on the midheaven. I don't love that unless I talk about something constructive. Okay, last call. We got about 15 minutes left. So any final questions, let me know now or forever hold your peace till next month. Uh, oh, and sorry, there's one more comment here. The hair industry has changed too and is more accessible. Yeah, in terms of that discussion of the outer planets and bigger shifts, maybe faster progress. Hopefully it's progress in a direction. Um, yeah, that's great. Oh yeah, okay. Any books I recommend for fertility astrology? Yes, two in particular. Um, Probably more. Hold on one second. I'm gonna go grab them. One of them is by Nicole Elsop, whatever her name is. What? Okay, so these are the only ones I've found so far, but pretty much like every ancient text that especially talks about electional astrology, um, yeah, electional astrology. There's usually a few passages on fertility or like when is the best time to try to have sex in order to become pregnant, or when is the best time to have sex to not become pregnant. This is addressed in so many books, but some of the ones that I've found so far, um, this is the one I think a lot of people are familiar with by Nicole Smuts Elsop. And Nicole Smuts Elsop was on the astrology podcast, and they talked about this book at one point in one episode. Uh, and this is Fertility Astrology, a modern medieval textbook. And one of the books that I believe they cite, and particularly about like the lot of pregnancy, I think, or I think that's it. But clearly, I need to study more. I don't do this as like a normal thing. I've kind of I wasn't gonna go into it because I take it so seriously because children and babies really intimidate me and I don't want to mess it up. And fertility treatments are so expensive, like $10,000, like just gone, you know? So I take this very seriously and I take it very heavily that what I say might determine, I mean, not only like, now I'm just going into caveat land, but what I say if I say something even in a way that's like overly stressful, then that has a psychological effect on that person who's trying to conceive, you know? And there's a lot of stuff like in the mind body where I don't want to be getting in anyone's way by saying the wrong thing. Like at the same time, if I were trying to conceive, I would want to know, hey, when should I not do this? And that's what I have helped people do is figure out, hey, this period of time doesn't look really successful. I would not spend $10,000 right now. I would wait until this time. But one of the books that Nicole cites is The Persian Nativities by Umar el-Tabari and Abu Bakr. This is another Benjamin Dykes translation. So The Persian Nativities. And there's several things in here about children, multiple children, um, nativities lacking children, having few children. Yeah, there's so many pages I have bookmarked here. There's a passage on sterile nativities, on the number of children, on the natives' happiness with children. So there's so much in here. And then I've also found, and these are other Benjamin Dike ones, these Dorotheus, that's the one that I just mentioned, where I think there's stuff about like immigration and success and returning to a land or finding a new home. Dorotheus of Sidon, Carmen Astrologicum. There's stuff in there about fertility. Not, I don't think there's a ton. And then I believe there's also some stuff. There might be a couple passages too. If you have this one lying around, choices and inceptions. This is a very much electional book. So, but I think top one that's the most practical to read for most people is this one. Um, and then definitely the green one. Those are my favorites. And people, I mean, if I had to refer someone to a fertility astrologer right now, it would be Alex Mickenack. Let me grab their stuff. Ishbeming Astrology. They are the one you want to go to, I think, if, yeah. Great question, though. Everyone has been warning Virgo risings about getting preggies. Why are we, is it because, why are we worried about that? That's so funny. Uh, Virgo risings, is it because your partners are going to be very fertile? Jupiter is doing a great job of potentially expanding the fourth house of family, but there's not a lot going on in the fifth house right now. I mean, Pluto's no longer in there. Um, but yeah, I don't know. There's too much personal astrology. I absolutely, I don't want to offend whoever the other astrologer is that was saying that, but I would be really careful about making blanket statements about fertility to whole groups of people based on astrology. I need a fainting couch. I need a fainting couch in here. Sometimes I just want to faint when I hear certain things. Oh my gosh. Yeah, I wish I knew why they were saying that. What am I missing? There must be something that I'm not aware of. If like several people are saying it, like clearly I'm the one that's in the dark. But yeah, no, there's so much personal astrology. I go through like 20 different things when I'm putting together and trying to paint a picture about fertility astrology to somebody. So there's a lot of different factors to consider. It's real though. It's a thing. Alrighty. So let me see if I have one rant that I can safely do. Oh, I do have one cute thing. I actually do have a couple cute things. I shouldn't get myself into trouble when Mars is on my stuff. Mars is on my stuff right now. Okay, what day was this? This was the last Taurus moon. I got an amazing gift from my partner. Uh, I came home. I was driving home from Minnesota, and I had just gotten home at around this time, and the moon was applying to Uranus within a few degrees. Do I have the exact? It was at 7:20 p.m. on the 3rd. That's the thing that I had recorded. So let me go to 7:20. This is when I received my present, my gift. I got a gift from my partner as soon as I walked in the door, pretty much. This was the chart when I received a gift. And we could guess forever about what this gift could be. But I'll just tell you, an adorable stun gun. It's a stun gun. It's a tase. It's a tiny taser shaped like a little frog. So, okay, buzz, buzz, zap, zap. Because I like to go to the park at night, sometimes by myself, to watch the stars, as some may know. And I have very kind of, it's one of the sketchiest practices that I do with astrology is I will sometimes, in order to ensure my safety, I will elect and say, okay, is Mars in my third house? Is Mars on any of the angles? Is Mars in the seventh? If Mars is anywhere around there or like Saturn, I don't go to the park by myself. But if the astrology looks like there's safe passage, I will go. And it's really like if my mom knew this, she would be very upset with me because it's not safe. If I had a child, I would not want them doing what I'm doing. So in any event, stun gun. And it's adorable. So Uranus is electricity. That's the tweet. That's the whole thing. That's the whole story. So that was cute. Uh, I probably shouldn't be telling people that I have that, but like five people watch this, so it's fine. And maybe it's a good idea for people. Not a friend or affiliate of the show, but the brand of this is Tiny Protectors. Tiny Protectors. If you're interested in getting your loved one, check the states and your local ordinances and the laws and all that. But it's a fun little thing. And I got it when the moon was applying to Uranus. Uh, and then the last cute thing I want to share, that's another little astrology learning moment. And this was, I don't know when exactly it was. The thing that mainly matters is that when I looked at the clock, um, the midheaven had like just gone into, uh, oh, why am I doing it that way? I don't know. That was pretty silly. The midheaven had just gone into Pisces. It was like this. I don't know where the moon was. Just ignore all of that. But when I looked at the clock, and I'll tell you what was going on in a second, but when I looked at the clock, like just within the last like 5 minutes, the midheaven and Pisces had locked into place. So Pisces had come into the midheaven. Pisces has entered the 10th house. And what was going on was I was watching football and a player lost their shoe and they were having a hell of a time getting their shoe back on. And the play clock was running. And there was enough time where like the video like broadcaster guy, the video guy zoomed in to the shoe and it was just like this foot and this guy struggling to get this shoe on. It was so funny. It was the most funny. And then I looked at the clock because I was like, what is this? This is ridiculous. And the sign that symbolizes feet had just clicked into the area of public, the most public part of the sky. Feet was up there. Pisces was up there. So that was fun. Astrology, it works. So that's how you learn astrology. That's how you just have things happen and you look at the clock and see what the clock says and be like, yep, that's that. And see how it is like that and how it's not like that. Okay, so just 2 minutes left. Let me think if I have any other announcements. I think we got through a lot of good material. Maybe I will do one more rant, a quick one, because I promised Andy Rooney, I'll give you Andy Rooney. Um, so this is kind of a semantics thing. And like in Buddhism, in Buddhism, we've got this whole notion of not getting too attached to the teachings. So you don't want to get so attached to any particular teachings that they're creating tension inside of you or that it's ruining your life or your relationships or creating discord or conflict. Like if your views or your attachment to views, I should say, is creating that kind of dynamic or energy in your life, then something's going wrong. So this is what I'm struggling with because uh, I see people who are kind of bastardizing some views that I have, and I'm noticing my attachment to my views. I'm noticing my attachment to the teachings. I'm like, oh, it should be like this, and they should understand it this way. And it's not as simple as that. And I try to be like a both and astrologer, you know. It's like if we're looking at this fizzy water can, from one angle we can see the nutrition label. And maybe from a different point of view, I can't, but I can see all that. And so similarly, if we're looking at a chart through a different house system or even a different astrology like Jyotish versus what I'm doing, we're kind of getting these different views, which is fine. Like it's like many truths all being correct at the same time. But there's one thing that comes up that's been coming up like for years. So this is not about a specific person. This is not about a specific account at all. This is a generally held kind of discussion that's been had for years, 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 years. And I don't think it's one that was really had for like the first 2000 years of the practice, though. And that is if astrology, if it's predictive, or there's astrologers who say that they're not using astrology for prediction. They're they're saying that they're using astrology for something else that's not prediction. And this is where I think we get into kind of semantics and, am I just being attached to a way of saying a thing? But like I guess some of the ways I've roughly heard it described, uh, they say they're like describing energy, describing the moment, um, describing someone's personality. Uh, so they're using this symbolic language, and they're saying it's more of a descriptive practice than a predictive practice, or using it as a reflective tool in the past about stuff that we already know about. But here's the thing, like no matter like you can say, I'm not eating a cheeseburger. It's just meat with cheese between two pieces of bread. Like you're eating a cheeseburger. Like you're eating a sandwich. It's like I'm not eating a sandwich. It's a panini. It's like that's a sandwich. Like if you can if without knowing a person, you can describe their personality without meeting them. You can say something that's going to elicit, like, yeah, that's me. That's how did you know that about me? That's actually very specific. Um, you're predicting something. It doesn't matter if you're doing it in real time. It doesn't matter, and like there's no difference between looking at events in the past that have already happened and looking at the reflection between those events and the sky. There's zero difference between that really and doing it with the future, with stuff that hasn't happened yet. There's just more uncertainty in the future because it hasn't happened yet and we don't know exactly how it's going to go down. But we can still pick off like the possible topics, the general quality, favorable, unfavorable, mixed, or both. There's a lot that we can say that, I mean, you can say you're just describing energy, but the ability to do that, it's all prediction because we could do all of this describing when that baby is like 0 years old and they haven't lived any of their life yet. Uh, or like say if you magically like in a just thought experiment, if you knew someone's birthday before they were born, like you knew what when they were going to be born, you'd still then be able to say the same exact stuff. So semantics, prediction makes people uncomfortable. And I can relate because when I was a sciencey, like only science, I've not discarded science. I'm very vaccinated, but my worldview is expanded so that I can hold astrology as well, and I can hold, other wisdom traditions much more than when I used to just be more narrow-minded. But I get like the concern or the fear or like the heaviness of prediction, you know? But we have to remember that no matter what, there's uncertainty. There's always going to be uncertainty. And this is where Richard Tarnas's quote about like astrology is specifically predictive archetypally. Like we get the specific archetypes. Like if your second house is being affected, that's about money or resources, time, energy, your resource. That's what that's about. It's not about your parents necessarily, you know? This is very specific stuff we can say, but there's always going to be that kind of real world material uncertainty about the exact nature and details of how it will unfold. But we still have that specific predictive ability. And if anyone is having any doubts about the predictive capacity, I actually have a cool little link from Andre Berbalt's prediction of the pandemic, which is one you can put in your back pocket for when your parents are upset with your life choices. Not talking about myself at all. Um, but this is a Mountain Astrologer article, and it's about the astrologer that predicted the pandemic a long time before it happened using predictive astrology techniques. So, people can go ahead and say that they're not doing prediction with their astrology. And maybe you're like there's levels to this. Like maybe you're not doing like Andre Barbalt level predictions. Um, I do tiny, I feel like little level predictions where I'm at right now. And some people, like the predictive capacity they have is pretty low, but that's a different thing than like the whole toolbox of astrology itself and whether or not it's capable of prediction. It 100% is capable of prediction. That's why we're doing this. That's why they made it. So that's my little ranty rant about I just don't get it. It's like I get it, but I just don't get it. Like I kind of understand why people are very hesitant to use those words. It's heavy. It's important. And it's where people want, I think they want astrology to be like this soft, fluffy, like easy, accessible thing. And I try to make it as accessible as possible, henceforth why I'm here for free, live, not behind any paywall. Um, but in reality, like astrology is a very sharp knife, and again, people can be like, it's not that sharp. It's just got this one edge that you have to be careful about. That's sharp. Like astrology is very sharp. And if people, you can treat it like that or not. You can respect it as what that is or not. And I think part of that is understanding that, yeah, it's predictive. It's predictive. So there's this hat that I really want. It's on the internet. I don't know if it's for sale on the internet, but it was on the internet a few years ago for sure for sale. And I almost bought it, but I didn't because I was trying not to be consumer. And it says, "Can I be mean for a second?" It's a hat that just says, "Can I be mean for a second?" And as a recovering people pleaser, I need my little "Can I be mean for a second" hat when I'm not even being mean. I'm just stating an opinion. Okay, that's it. That's all I have for tonight. Thank you so much, everyone. I appreciate your presence. I appreciate your contributions. Thank you for all of your comments. And I hope you enjoy my links. And there'll probably be more below after I re-listen to this. Um, my email is aligninglighastro@gmail.com. And you can always comment below. And I have a newsletter you can sign up for to keep up with me. Once a month, I send out a newsletter. All of that is at www.aligninglightastrology.com. And hit the like button, please. Hit the subscribe button. And of course, the best way to support me is to book a reading and check out my new services and my lower student prices. And last thing, I've been noticing, I need to talk about this more. Let me show you. I have some student resources on my website actually. And student resources. So we've got beginner astrology cheat sheet. So this is here. Definitely lots of tables. It's like 20 pages. It ended up being more of a beginner guide than a cheat sheet. But I have that for free for download. And then I also have a lot of favorite astrology resources. And then finally, for people who are starting to read charts, trying to put together things with their own chart or looking at charts for other people, this is a way that I have for organizing myself. I don't fill out every single line of this for every single person. It depends on the needs of the client and what I'm looking at, birth chart or timing or both. But it kind of helps me to organize, and it almost acts as like a checklist just to make sure I don't miss anything. So you can take a look at that. All this stuff is very available on my website, www.aligninglightastrology.com. And I think that's it. So thanks so much, everyone. I will see you at the end of the month for my January forecast. That is going to be, oh yeah, I did schedule it. The 30th of December at 5:30 p.m. Central, 6:30 p.m. Eastern Time. I'm going to talk about January. And then definitely get signed up for my newsletter because I'm making all my 2026 content right now. Uh, I am halfway done recording it. I still need to edit it and get it all put together. But I'm doing an intro video, or just basically like a standalone video that really talks about all the most important transits I found for 2026. And then I'm doing a whole separate video that is rising sign horoscopes, very vague, broad ones, but I hit the headlines for each rising sign for 2026. So stay tuned because all of that content's kind of in process and will be here very shortly. So there's just lots of content coming. Of course, this time of year, it's fun. Like I really enjoy it, but it is busy. It's a lot to take in. I'm getting ready to do my personal tarot reading for myself for 2026, and that's a lot to take in. So we'll have a month to process. Oh, and final thing. I promise this is the last thing. I'm thinking about doing a 2025 reflection session, very much like this. Like I'll just show up live on YouTube at some point, but more to just discuss 2025 and look back at, reflect on all of the transits that happened. And I don't know if people would be interested in that. I think I might do it regardless of interest, but let me know in the comments below or in the chat if you're interested in a reflection time and kind of looking back at what has been before we barrel off into the future and start trying to process all of that. Um, okay, that's it. Have a good month. Safe travels for all of your holiday traveling. And I will see you at the end of the month on the 30th.